Okay, thanks very much, folks. This next breakout session is called Applying Behavioural Insights to Improve Customer Experience. And it's been presented by Gary Birnie, who's not just a user experience designer, but he's also a behavioural scientist. So, a round of applause to Gary.
Hi everyone, just one moment please. Let me just get this to work. And 2 seconds. There we go. And there we go. Okay, so hi everyone. It's fantastic to be here today. I'm very excited to give this presentation. And this is the first time I've spoken since COVID in public. It's usually been online, so I'm very much looking forward to this. So my name is Gary Birnie, and I'm a user experience research and designer and behavioural scientist who produces behaviour change products in health and financial sectors. The title of my talk is Applying Behavioural Insights to Improve Customer Experience. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give a brief overview of what behavioural science is, then introduce you all to a behaviour change framework we can all use called COM-B, and finally I'll quickly show the outcomes from behaviour change projects which have used COM-B. So first off, I'd like to give you a little bit of background on who I am. As I've already said, my name's Gary Birnie, and I've been designing products and services for events in the entertainment industry, iOS apps for blue chip organisations, to running multivariate tests for banks. I was also part of the design team for the Couch to 5K app for Public Health England and the Change for Life Food Smart app as well. I also research physical activity, specifically looking into the motivational effects of goals and goal messaging. So I found that by applying behavioural science to the work that I do, I'm able to create more effective and impactful solutions for customers, users, and clients. Key points when introducing behavioural science to people are that behavioural science is an interdisciplinary field that seeks to understand human behaviour through the lens of various disciplines, including psychology, sociology, economics, and anthropology. Behavioural science is rooted in the idea that human behaviour is shaped by a complex interplay between individual, social, cultural, and environmental factors. There are a variety of research methods, including experiments, surveys, and observations used to study human behaviour and develop theories and models to explain it. Behavioural science is a constantly evolving field that continues to develop new theories and methods and applications to better understand and influence human behaviour. There are practical applications for behavioural science in areas such as finance, sustainability, marketing, public policy, as it can inform the development of interventions and programmes that promote positive behaviour change. Behavioural science is rooted in the idea that human behaviour is shaped. Sorry, just one moment. If I went to the wrong one. Sorry, 2 seconds, please. I went that way. That's it. This is where behavioural science adds value. Behavioural science's process by nature starts with the problem. It helps teams to focus on exactly what they're trying to change, and then understanding that deeply before thinking about solutions. Applying behavioural science allows teams to identify what tactics might be most effective to achieve a desired behaviour. And when we know what makes people tick, we can design interventions to engage them. Interventions is really just jargon for anything that we create intended to change people's behaviour. It can be an app, it can be a bit of comms, or it can be a service. There are a number of effective frameworks to identify a problem and provide solutions to changing behaviour. One such framework is called COM-B. Behaviour change frameworks are the foundation of applied behavioural science. Frameworks are designed by behavioural scientists for policymakers and industry leaders. These summaries of cutting-edge decision-making insights are essential to applying research in the public and private sectors. Behaviour change frameworks distill strategies for influencing human decisions in simple prompts or acronyms. This makes it possible for complex theoretical insights about how people think and act to make their way into the practices of organisations across every industry and environment. COM-B helps us to identify specific barriers and facilitators to the behaviours we want to promote. We're starting with that goal. What is it that we would like our customers or users to do? And when we get really specific about that, and we apply the COM-B framework to that behaviour, we're able to start to get specific about what levers we have available to us to design for. The B in COM-B is for behaviour. It's an acronym, and it stands for capability, opportunity, motivation, and behaviour. The B, behaviour, is the centre of the whole structure. Once this is defined, we can do the analysis of other pieces. Each of these break into two components. So for capability, the components break down into psychological and physical capability. Is the person physically capable of completing a behaviour? With psychological capability, we can be knowledge or understanding, and that is often the case with complex behaviours. Two components of motivation, reflective motivation, is really about whether this is an important behaviour to someone. Do they value it? Does the person actually want to achieve it? Where does it all fall in their priority order? Someone might really value a behaviour, but they may actually prioritise others over it. So reflective motivation is not just about do they value the behaviour, but do they value it over everything else. With automatic motivation is really the mental models of a person, and these are formed by the culture and the people around them. With opportunity, opportunity is about the environment in which a behaviour takes place, whether that is the social environment, the other people around them who support the behaviour, or the physical environment. For instance, people might not have the equipment in their home to do this, to do a behaviour. You can see that capability, motivation, opportunity are related. Having the capability or opportunity can influence the motivation to do a behaviour. So why is COM-B a popular framework for behaviour change? Well, first off, is that it's actually really straightforward. It's not complex, and you don't need behaviour change expertise to understand it, which is really important because most of the people that I collaborate with do not have a behavioural science background. So I need to be able to talk to the teams that I work with accurately from a science perspective, but also for it to make sense to them. And COM-B offers me the ability to do that. It's really structured, as you'll see. It's very clear and easy to follow and easy to communicate to people. It's evidence-based, which is essential, as it's really important that the approaches that we take are rooted in research and that there is evidence out there that shows that an approach that is suggested is likely to be effective. for the outcomes we're trying to achieve. COM-B has that. And finally, it's collaborative. It's very easy to slot in to the activities that are likely to happen in any given project. So this is the basic process of building a behavioural science intervention. You start with the smallest bit, which is defining the target behaviour. You really need to think about what it is you want your users to do. You have to do this with some degree of specificity. COM-B analysis will help us to understand what is making that behaviour harder or easier for people to do. And once we have that, we can start to figure out how to fix it. How do we make this behaviour as easy as possible to do? Identify intervention functions is really, what is the product going to do? Essentially, what is the function of a product or service with respect to the things that make this behaviour harder for people to do? And lastly, once you've figured out what you're going to offer, then it determines the features of your product and service and what it's going to have, service is going to have based on the behaviour change techniques. To target behaviours are behaviours you want to change with your product. Which behaviours are going to be most related to the project's big KPIs or outcome goals? This tends to be negotiated with the client or project manager. Usually someone will come to the table with an idea of what has to happen for a product to be successful, which we'll want to pressure test to make sure that if we're looking at the product success metrics, is this really the behaviour that people need to do to get us there? Real-world examples would be that a product owner comes to you and says, this is what we want our users to do. The others are more practical. Do you have access to the people who do that behaviour? Sometimes there's a user group that just doesn't have the power to overcome that particular behaviour. Can you influence people with the constraints of your product? For instance, if you have a mobile product, you wouldn't want to create something that requires lots of intricate typing into a form, as it doesn't lend itself to a mobile screen. Really think about the practical limitations of your product that your product presents. The way that the analysis works at a high level is we use COM-B to understand the capability, opportunity, and motivational factors that affect those target behaviours. Then identify intervention functions, and again, that's just a kind of category of solutions that are likely to influence the target behaviours in the desired direction based on that analysis. Then add in specific design features the behaviour change techniques that fit with the selected intervention functions, and of course, with all good design, there's testing, iteration, and testing. Researching COM-B barriers. The best way to research barriers is through interviews and observations. Every question is anchored on the behaviour, so the B in COM-B. If you're looking at multiple behaviours, you're going to ask multiple sets of questions so that you can uncover the barriers for each behaviour. This helps narrow down a list of behaviours early on. The types of questions I prefer to ask usually gets people to tell their story and for me to listen and to start to categorise responses. To get a good level of detail, you'd ask questions for capability, opportunity, and motivation. For instance, capability probes would be what makes it physically challenging for you to do the behaviour. Or for opportunities, what do other people do related to that behaviour? What's the physical environment in which you do the behaviour? And for motivational probes, how does doing this behaviour relate to other goals that you have? So in terms of influencing behaviour, when you're thinking about influencing capability, some things to consider are, do people have the knowledge that they need to do something? Do they have the skill, which is different from knowledge? Skill is like knowledge, but put into practice. Does the person have the physical or mental strength to do the desired behaviour and the stamina to sustain it, or the resources to change the behaviour? So some of the things to influence opportunity in terms of time are there ways to restructure people's environment to give them the opportunity to engage in the behaviour? With resources, do people have the tools that they need in order to accomplish something? With interpersonal influences or cultural expectations, for instance, does the person work in an environment where the people around them believe that a set of behaviours are not acceptable? Because that is very much likely to influence their own behaviour. And influence in someone's motivation, plans, action planning is very effective for behaviour change technique when it comes to helping people do the behaviour. Prioritisation of goals is a frequent stumbling block for people across all kinds of behaviours. By helping them develop an action plan and to really think about how will I accomplish this, as well as accomplish other important things, is a practical bit of help that often gets people over that hurdle. With plans, can also create accountability and self-efficacy. Evaluation can persuade somebody to feel more positively about something. Can you basically sell them on it, make them excited about a particular behaviour? And if so, you're changing their emotions, which is the pathway to changing their behaviour. With motives, so can you help them to think differently about what their goals might be? And impulses and inhibitions, this is a place where habits come in. Sometimes with behaviours, people do have habits that are really hard to break because they're automatic. They're repeated and they're something that we typically do frequently. And so sometimes somebody may intend to do something differently, but the habit takes over. So the last piece of the COMBI model is connecting barriers to sustain to suitable interventions. I've mentioned intervention functions already, in which are basically, these are just types of solutions that can be applied to change behaviour based on barriers and facilitators found in the research. This list has come out of all research, lots of research on behaviour change, where it identified that if you look at the total landscape of interventions that are out there, they can mostly be categorised into these groups. So we have education and training, which are what they sound like. We've got persuasion, which is about changing someone's emotion around something. So it's a communication technique that helps somebody feel more positively or negatively about something. Incentives and coercion are two aspects of the same thing. With restriction is about using rules that reduce the likelihood of unwanted behaviour. And environmental restructuring is changing the social and physical environment the person is in. And modelling is when you show the person how the behaviour should be done. So this is where the key part, this is really the key part of the COMBI model. So for each of the COMBI components, for capability, motivation and opportunity, on the right there, this is essentially the decision tree. You can look at which barrier you're trying to overcome, follow the line to the places where the squares are filled in, and this is where the research says that this solution is likely to work if you encounter this barrier. So if you think of a project as having a whole universe of things that you could build, this is where you can start. You can use the evidence to narrow it down and select things that are actually most likely to work. For example, if you're looking for a solution that addresses physical opportunity, then training, restriction, environmental restructuring, and enablement are solutions that work. If the barrier is physical capability, training and enablement and needs satisfaction would be the best approach. So why this works? We start with the target behaviour, then there's the mechanism of action, which is actually the process through which your behaviour is changed. Then the intervention function, essentially the active ingredient, basically what the intervention is trying to do. And the last piece of this is the behaviour change techniques, which are specifically features that deliver the intervention function, which is a solution. It's a huge list of behaviour change techniques, 97 of them actually, that are a fantastic way to spark ideas during brainstorming. So for instance, we want to do something that includes education and modelling. So how do we bring that to life? We look at the list and we see what behaviour change techniques we could use that make sense, and if we're going to overcome these barriers to get to this behaviour. So we would potentially consider 6.1, which is demonstration of behaviour, which is accompanied by a description and examples on how to use it. So to wrap up, if you know why somebody does something, it makes sense. If you know why somebody does something, it makes it so much easier for you to help them do it differently. And that is the real value of this approach. It is really to understand the why so that the conversation can change to be, how can I help you? So I've just got pulled together a couple of outcomes of behaviour change products which used COM-B. This is very much examples that focus on the energy saving. So education was used as the intervention function solution, and feedback with energy use data was much more effective when combined with peer education. Put to a 7% reduction in energy used was achieved, while an intervention where only energy saving information was provided performed poorly. Social rewards, which are those not based on financial or material gains, tend to outperform small monetary rewards for incentives. One study achieved energy savings of over 6% for public social rewards, but found an increase in energy use for a group offered private monetary rewards. Modelling provides an example for people to aspire to or imitate. Modelling is an important part of interventions with considerable energy savings of 12% in different studies. Modelling is particularly effective when done by role models such as senior managers. And finally, a visual feedback system was produced, which produced 9% in energy savings through persuasive feedback interventions. And this basically involved a screen shown in an aquarium with the visual conditions would reduce in response to the increased energy use. So I would just like to thank you all for being here today. And if you'd like to get in touch with me about anything else you've heard, my email is on the screen. So thank you very much.
Let me just clarify something. You managed to reduce energy use by making the fish harder to see.
So I didn't. This was an existing study, and what it basically was, it was like a screensaver, so that the more the person was using energy, the less the water would get browner, the fish wouldn't swim as much, and it would basically just show that your increased use of energy was hurting the environment.
I found that absolutely extraordinary.
It's good.
Okay, yeah, good. We'll approve that. Any questions on the floor? Again, we can get a microphone to you.
Oh, as the hungry people.
Oh, right at the front here, please. Yeah, of course, always.
Thank you. How do you apply the COM-B framework when you want to get one outcome, the same outcome, but for a number of different behaviours? So, for example, you want everyone to do the same thing, but you're actually looking at different demographics that would typically behave in a different manner to get to that point.
Yeah, so context is everything here. Context is kind of key as well, because what might work with one user group or one group of people won't work for another. So it's very important that, and this is why I said, do you have access to the people that you actually are designing for? So that you would do a number of interviews with those different user groups to find out what barriers there were to that behaviour.
One of the, I suppose, cleverest pieces of examples of social rewards that you were talking about earlier, I thought was just that, March the 23rd, 2020, lockdown, everybody's there, and there was that one banner headline, protect the NHS. Mm-hmm. What a piece of absolute genius that was, because just about everybody I knew was prepared to buy into it immediately and radically change their behaviour.
Yeah. I mean, there was, the government has huge amounts of guidelines on messaging for the public based on behavioural science, and that was definitely one of them, because it was an actionable message.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions from the floor? Okay. Can I ask you to thank Gary one more time? Thank you. Hey.